We got a lot to talk about today. We were in Italy.
Oh my God.
I don't want to go to Italy.
We did that. That was the ongoing joke.
That was the ongoing joke, yeah.
I don't want to go. And it's like, Italy's so beautiful and magical.
It's really crazy.
And they know it. These Italians, they know that their lives are perfect.
They know it's
because they're like, I drink espresso in the day.
They're not upset by anything.
No.
They are upset by nonsense, but not real upset. Like little discussions. Her pussy was not that tight. That kind of stuff. But
this pizza is a bullshit.
yeah, that stuff, but not real stuff.
Everything was amazing. I know I took a mild dose of Ozempic so that I could just maintain my weight.
Yeah.
But the food was a killer. We ate like a couple of pigs.
Unbelievable.
Really beautiful. The kids had a blast. They actually enjoyed it.
And if you're listening or watching right now and you don't know about Italy, it's really just that my father... I got to the point where it was, I guess I would say I was probably like 30, let's say around 37 to 38, maybe like around there, where my career had changed to a point where I was making a good living. And I did the thing that I think everyone dreams of doing. If you love your parents, you're like, I want to like do things for you.
If you love them, yeah.
Only if you give a shit about
For
them.
me, it's as far away as I can get.
Yeah, right.
Can I move to Texas? You got it.
I just one day I'm with them and I'm like, hey, I'm fortunate enough to have this going well right now, and I'd love to send you guys anywhere you want to go, all expenses paid trip for your parents. And he's like, oh, all right. I'm like, anywhere you want. Like, he's like, okay. I'm like, well, where would you want to go? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, Italy. He's like, I don't want to go to Italy.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? He's like, I don't like their food. You don't like their food?
I don't like Italian.
And then he's like,
it's the best.
Museums and shit. You look up, you see the painting, and you're like, yeah, I saw it. And I'm like, that's your take on Italy? Yeah. I go, so where would you want to go? He goes, maybe England. They speak English. Okay. Australia? He's like, I was there once. I don't really want to go back. I'm like, okay. And that was that. That was the end of the fucking thing.
He had no desire anymore to see stuff. His dream vacation.
This is before he got sick, too.
No, this is just since I knew him for 20 years. His dream was to get on a cruise ship.
And go back to the room.
Yeah. And lay in those paper-thin boxers.
With his nuts hanging out.
Yep. And watch Turner Classic Movies.
Isn't this great? And he would say that. If you spent time with him in his state of rest, he would go, isn't this great? And you're like, this is pretty great. Yeah.
You told me too, like whenever you'd go out to dinner, if you guys were traveling, ready to go back to the room, buddy?
You ready to go back to the room? Like, well, we're in a city that we're visiting. You don't want to see any of it? He's like, all right.
Yeah.
And then he'd kind of be like, all right, you ready to go?
You ready to
go? Want to go to the movies?
Movies?
The movies.
Wild.
Yeah. We're visiting a city that we've never been to together. We're in Vancouver. What do you want to do? Let's go to the movies. Okay. And now what? He's like, let's go back to the room. Okay. So you go back to the room. 3 days of that. He's like, wasn't this a great trip? You're like, yeah, this was awesome.
We saw the room.
Yeah.
Which I wonder why the cruise was, because
I know.
But when
why.
you think about it, they're small rooms. Even if you get the deluxe cabin.
It's not huge.
It sucks.
It's because
not good.
It's all self-contained. And so the anxiety, like he really, he also didn't sit still. I don't know if you remember, he would always like.
Right. He was always fidgeting. And, yeah.
And the cruise is really comforting to hit to that mentality.
Okay.
Because when the cruise ship, even like the party is moving, right? And the food, the entertainment, it all happens on this thing, but you don't have to leave the ship. It happens there. And I think he likes that it's all
right. It's all
basically
contained.
The ship is almost like the room.
Right.
You don't have to, like it's great. He would never get off. I mean, a couple times
that, yeah.
because he was just, pushed it. But you want to talk about being back on time. I mean,
oh boy.
If they're like, this thing takes off at 5 p.m., fucking 2:30, he's like, let's get back on. Like,
well, I have such anxiety about that. The one time I went on a cruise with your family, I remember we docked in Turks and Caicos.
Yeah.
Same thing. I was like, man, we got to get back.
Yeah,
it's
course.
It's gonna leave. I'm gonna be stuck here in this island. It's scary. I don't like cruises at all. I don't want to be confined. I don't want to be told that the whistle blows and you go and you do buffet.
I would always tell them too.
It's not good.
Because they were like, well, let's go on this cruise. And I was like, I don't want to go on a cruise. And they were like, well, I go, well, I'd rather just go to like one of those places and spend time, like let's say in Turks and Caicos, in St. Martin.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather, and then sit on that beach and explore that area. I don't want to get off for 2 hours and come back. But he loved that.
And I don't want to be in the pool, the chlorine
Your mother's
pool.
going to get off on the ship, right? Like do some shopping or some shit. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, we did his voice the entire time, but mostly my favorite Top Dog is when he was going to retire and he had the great plan.
It's the best ever.
Please do it. Please do the bit.
He would go.
I love this. I could hear this every day.
Goes, your mother and I are excited about this new chapter, okay, of retirement. And what we're going to do is see the country, get in the car and drive across the country. Your mother's never seen Vermont. She's never seen Maine. She's never seen the Grand Canyon, okay? And I'm going to and we don't have anything to do. So we can just drive a few hours, bring the dogs, stay at like a Red Roof Inn, and then drive the next day. I was like, that's what you want to do? He's like, well, your mother's never seen any of this. I'm like, okay. And he would talk about this not once or twice, for months. Like, I would say 9 months leading up to, let's say, 6 months before retirement. Yeah. And then one day we were all together and we were like, so are you excited to see the country? And she was like, what? And I'm like, you're going to get in a car and you're going to drive for months and you're going to see the country. And she was like, no. And I laid out the plan. She goes, I don't want to do that. And then he was like, oh, you don't? I'm like, you've never pitched it to her? And he's like, well, you've never seen Maine. And she was like, I don't want to get in a car and drive to Maine.
A car, not even like a motorhome.
No.
Just a
sit
car.
In the car.
With the dogs? How many dogs? 5 dogs at the time they
See,
had?
I also understand why he liked that. He liked that it was a mission. It was mission oriented. It was like, well, I have nothing to do.
Yeah.
So if you drive across the country, it gives you a task.
Something to do.
And then it would occupy his mind. Because then he was probably like back to square one, like, well, I don't know what to do then. Yeah.
That's true. Like, that's a massive project.
Yeah, it's a project.
It would take years.
We've been just driving.
Just keep driving.
We're driving now for 7 months across the country.
The Red Roof Inn, yes.
Yeah.
I've stayed in a few of those.
He said that specifically, the Red Roof Inn, and they could take dogs.
I did that as a feature act when I was super poor and starting out in comedy. They're not as glamorous as one might think.
No, they like dogs. We have dogs. Yeah, it was all he gave the shit. And then one day he was just like, there goes my dream.
Yeah. Because she did not agree.
No, she was like, she goes, do I have a say in this? Yeah. And he was like, well, of course. And she's like, I don't want to drive across the nation.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
And by the way, he didn't have he was late 60s or getting into his 70s. He didn't have the endurance for 10-hour drives. That means they were going to do like 5 hours a clip and be like, okay, let's spend the night after 5 hours. And then they would be 3 days in Florida before they got out of there.
Right. Well, and also, if you have driven this country, which I've driven a lot of it for comedy, is that you don't realize that this country is enormous and there are endless stretches of highway that just go for days, man.
It is it beats you down. I mean, I did it in my early 20s. I did East Coast of Florida to LA a few times, and that shit, even at that age, it beats you down.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about driving until your eyes are bleeding, and you pull over and you're like, oh yeah, you left Florida, you're only in Mississippi or whatever, and then you just fucking next day you drive all fucking day and you're still in Texas.
Yeah, and the food's terrible, and the Red Roof Inns are not as glamorous as you would think.
Brutal.
Ooh, hey Jeans, did you enjoy that highlight? Why don't you have one more click of fun around here? I don't know. Click here or here. Try it out. Have more fun. Why don't you subscribe? That way, every time a video drops, you can be notified. You can send it to your grandmother. You're not going to miss a moment of denim, okay? Try it out.